Welcome back to Action Hour with the Whidbey Environmental Action Network. On this podcast, we will be discussing environmental issues affecting Whidbey and Camano Islands in Washington State, diving into ecology and policy impact, and educating you on what you can do about it. We are back with part 2 of our conversation with our founders, Marianne Edain and Steve Erickson. When we last left our heroes, they had just founded the Whidbey Environmental Action Network and were just getting started with their advocacy on Whidbey Island.
In 1989, around the same time, there was a proposal in Oak Harbor what was then just outside of Oak Harbor to clear cut an area so that the new homes that were going in would have a view of the golf course. And the proposed mitigation was to have planter boxes.
Right.
At that point, I sort of looked at it and I went, ah. And, I read the damn law, State Environmental Policy Act. Clearly, they hadn't complied, and I just laid it out. And the hearing examiner said that was the best argument he'd ever heard. And he never complimented me like that again. But we did win that one.
What year was that?
That was 89.
89. And was that the first time? So when did you get into reading the law?
That was really when I
It was the planter boxes that really got you going. And you were like, I'm going to read every law I can.
Come on.
You think of it, remember the Engelman's?
Oh, yeah. And the guy they had doing the environmental work for them misidentified was probably Sitka spruce as Engelmann spruce. And if you found Engelmann spruce at sea level, that is really, really significant. So, I was able to ride that some. So then we kind of continued. And then in 1990, the legislature was taken by surprise by the fact that people over the state were not real happy about the idea of having houses built every possible place you could think of on Whidbey. The hammers just slamming nonstop. And so a coalition of environmental orgs warned the legislature, basically, we're going to run an initiative if you don't do something. As a result, kind of at the last minute, the legislature passed the Growth Management Act. The organizations ran an initiative anyway. I collected signatures for the initiative petition, and that was really the start of WEAN's, list.
So
even just sign up list of people going to a demonstration or something.
Okay, so you're like member list, or you're the people supporters list.
Yes.
Okay.
It kind of dragged on, and the counties and cities were supposed to first have new comprehensive plans. And the difference was the comprehensive plans would actually have effect. Mm-hmm. The comprehensive plans are the policies. Then you have the regulations and the zoning that implement those policies. But now the policies, the regulations actually have to be consistent with and implement the policies. Before that, always has been kind of a wish list,
Okay. So the Growth Management Act, as we know it, was 1990. Is that one?
90.
Yep. 1990. And so WEAN as an organization, as it is known now, kind of grew out with the Growth Management Act, like it came together at the same time.
We were using the name WEAN. We were going to every planning commission hearing and meeting twice a week, which would be totally enervating and totally non-productive. We couldn't really do anything because the governor didn't appoint people to the Growth Management Appeals Board.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't really challenge anything. The fact that they were taking years and years and years, and the legislature kept giving counties and cities extensions and extensions. In the meantime, the sprawl just continues.
Hey, Steve.
So
remember the sustainable forestry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's go back to forestry there for a minute. There was so much flack about both Trillium and Plum Creek Timber, which bought up had shitloads of checkerboard lands and basically liquidated them, cut them all.
Where did they do that? Where did this?
This was the late 80s, 90s, early 90s. Basically, you have to realize the thing about so-called
the checkerboard lands visible from I-90.
Yeah, and a lot of those lands were visible from I-90. So people would be driving along and, ooh, that side of the mountain is bare now. Oops, that side of that mountain is bare. That side of the mountain looks like it's going to be bare really soon.
Okay.
And people really freaked out. And so there was a huge push to reform forestry. Then the candidate who was the reform candidate who got in after Classic U, going back to that, but convened what's basically a managing dissent kind of thing. DNR had two managing dissent kind of things. One was called Timber, Fish, and Wildlife, where they promised to do this and this and this, and the industry promised to do this and this and this. Somehow they never got around to it.
Okay.
That was the Timber, Fish, and Wildlife Agreement. And then with all the flack over forest liquidation, basically, because after all, trees grow really much slower than if you can get capital from them now and invest it in widgets or pay your stockholders, Okay. It's no different than a leveraged takeover of, any industry. Really. That's a situation of forestry now. Okay. Anyway, so
Back to the
they convene the Sustainable Forestry Roundtable, which was 1990, basically a way of managing dissent. Various environmental groups from around the state and the industry and DNR and the tribes and
the counties.
And it was, ultimately the question came to whether the environmental organizations would sign off on this supposed, brand new day in forestry that didn't do jack all, as far as we could tell. I mean, I realized that it's kind of weird because, I would read what they had there and I'd follow through. What does that mean on the ground? Like I remember at one meeting, they proposed some kind of rotation scheme or something. And I looked right after they'd agreed that, slope stability was unstable for at least 15 years following clear cutting, and I looked and said, well, 1/3 of the landscape is going to be in that unstable condition at any one time. Oh.
So this is like part of at this point, it's very clear that you're going through all of the legislation and all of the potential policies and as a voice of dissent saying that, what doesn't logically make sense from an ecological standpoint, but also just accuracy in general, right? That if people don't have subject matter expertise, they're not necessarily going to be able to create policy.
And I found the environmental movement was very top heavy of people who did not have subject matter expertise. I found that rather distressing in part. Kind of in the same context at the time, you had some people who'd been involved with Earth First, starting what was then the Greater Ecosystem Alliance, since become, after several changes, Conservation Northwest.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's Friedman and those people. So WEAN was sort of a more kind of visualized as a more localized version of that. And kind of the image I had for WEAN was that WEAN would do kind of the long-term planning for a preserve system on Whidbey Island.
Okay. So WEAN, you envision long-term planning in terms of preservation, but actually WEAN is known for brush fire response on the island.
Nobody else was doing it.
Yeah. And when we say brush fire response, what we mean is direct action as a reaction to things that are happening to people.
Actual defense. It's easy to draw up grand plans about preserves, but, when the bulldozers are out there, what are you going to do? I remember one point there because basically at that point it was me and Marianne and I don't think WEAN was incorporated yet by that point. And we were basically covering the phone. We finally had a phone back where we lived, which is a story in itself. But
I do want to hear about that. I heard that there was no electricity and no running water in your original home that you lived in together.
You can tell you the story of how we got the phone. It has to do with her mother.
Okay. Yeah. We'll talk about your brush fire phone in a second, but.
Okay. Anyway, so, and we're basically funding it out of our pockets, sending out these, photocopied newsletters. And at one point, I remember, I'd go into town to get the mail, and I'd be around, and I'd see somebody and say, and they say, "Hey, thanks for what you're doing, really." And I'd say, "Oh, do you have any time?" And they'd never have any time. Never, ever. And then at a certain point, a light bulb went off. And I said, "Okay, do you have any money?" People started giving me money. Voila, we no longer had to worry about covering the phone bill. That at the time. So, it got into the early 90s there, and they're just, the Planning Commission is spinning its gears, nothing's happening. Finally, the governor appoints members of the Growth Management Hearings Board, and the legislature says you must adopt comprehensive plans by December 31st, 1994. Okay, finally there was a deadline. It was actionable. And probably about 6 months before that, I just stopped going to every planning commission meeting and hearing because I knew it was futile, and just kind of prepared for that. And, the day after that deadline came, we filed our first Growth Management Act case.
What was the first case?
The first case was that county regulations that allowed
non-residential floating zone.
Non-residential floating zone, which is to say you could do any kind of development anywhere as the non-residential floating zone, otherwise known as spot zoning. And I think we did the 3.5 units per acre then too. Or was that the second?
That was the second case.
Okay. Anyway, we did that. The hearings board had the power to, find that somebody was in compliance or in non-compliance. If they found non-compliance, they could remand back for correction, but they could also invalidate the code or the regulation that was challenged if it had the likelihood of, what's the wording? Basically making it possible to comply later. So you allow enough sprawl. What's the point of layer say you can't have sprawl? So we won that hands down. It was gone, and we turned around, we looked at each other, and we smiled and said, "Let's do it again."
How did it feel to win, and how did it feel to have that because it's a different action?
You have to understand the atmosphere in the Planning Commission here. At one point, Rufus Rose was chairman, and we got up there one day, and it's time for the public to speak, and I started speaking, and he interjects. I said, "We're speaking for, member households." He says, "Well, who are your members? I want to see a membership list." And I kind of went, "What? What's your name? Joe McCarthy?" And that was kind of the tenor then. I think by then they'd formed the Property Rights Alliance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, by then they'd formed the Property Rights Alliance. And which was a statewide reaction to GMA, of course.
Okay. So the Property Rights Alliance was a reaction to the GMA, and the big purpose of the GMA was to stop suburban sprawl, right? Stop sprawl in general. And okay, all right. And so they were the Property Rights Alliance. What was their agenda?
Stop it, kill it, whatever. Business as usual.
We could do
Stop the GMA.
Whatever we want with our land,
Okay.
That's about it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Got it.
So then the second case we filed was challenging. The county had just pretty much the entire shoreline zone for 3.5 houses per acre everywhere. And I actually crunched some numbers, and I figured out that under the existing zoning, if it was all developed, Island County would have about 270,000 people.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. You might say it was a little speculatively overzoned. So, um,
Mhm.
I went to the hearings board with that, asked for invalidity because, that it be declared invalid. It was Spralta and the county's attorney, deputy prosecutor who had the case, who was a nice guy who unfortunately got stuck with defending the indefensible. You have to sort of feel for him. Basically said, well, there's all these reasons why we need an exception here, blah, 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 blah. And the hearings board said, but then how will we ever get compliance? Struck it down overnight, it's gone. Over the next 2 years, we just kept chipping away in case after case, several other cases, to the point where enough of the zoning ordinance had been invalidated, the developers were paralyzed. They couldn't do anything. That caused them to put pressure on their buddies in the county commission and said, I guess we got to do something. So that entered the new phase of ramming through a comprehensive plan and new zoning code that would let them do whatever they want or have enough obfuscation so they could do that. And that's kind of in my mind, I kind of separate that as a whole new phase. Just to give you a flavor of the times now, because it's very easy, I found, for people to look back. Everybody was an environmentalist back then, of course, and except for all the ones who weren't. And at that time, personally, let's see, the county tried to first kick us off our land for having a composting toilet that I built. And then they tried to fine us $14,000 for having some parts trucks. I mean, we were at the end of over a half-mile dirt road. Now, this wouldn't have anything to do with, our activities, would it now?
Seems like it would, actually, that's a question I have. Like, you've been called, well, maybe self-described as eco-cops, and have been called by others the Toad people. Have you had other interesting nicknames over the years? And how do you both feel about the mythos around your activism?
Well, on the one hand, I kind of, at first when people would come up to me and tell me about some development, and I've had developers come up to me and tell me this, I didn't do that because of what you guys did. And we wouldn't have even known about what they were doing. So, it was the old speak softly and carry a big stick. But we spoke loudly and carried a big stick. The ability to use that legal card, really made all the difference. Because then, after, they try to denigrate us. They never win their, of course, we didn't win everything. They didn't win. No. But by and large, we won an awful lot. And, I would put my win-loss record against any, member of the bar in the state, actually. And I'd probably come out, fair, at least. It's kind of like, well, at first, when people told me that, I'd be utterly puzzled. I mean, people come up to me and say, and thank me for stopping the McDonald's at Bayview, I'd kind of go, what? What are they talking about? I didn't even know somebody was proposing to do a McDonald's at Bayview, But apparently, the reputation was such that the assumption was WEAN was always watching. And in fact, that's what, was it Matt McDowell who said that? Or was it the guy at SPU?
It was the SPU guy.
The flack for Seattle Pacific University.
No, it was board president.
Board president, small group of activists who are always watching, I think was what he called it. And, of course,
I kind of love that.
Watching. It's not possible to always be watching, but the reputation was such that they always figured we're going to get caught if we do this. So maybe we just shouldn't do it. Instead, tone it down a little bit, So there's a lot of effect we've had that I think is like totally unquantifiable, that you can't, you have no idea about it at all. That's just kind of an interesting perspective on it.
I mean, there have been so many cases and so many issues that, God, where was I with all of this? I mean, starting 1993, Oak Harbor sewage treatment plant. A young, newly minted attorney got a hold of us and asked if we wanted to be plaintiffs in a case against the city of Oak Harbor, because their sewage treatment plant, you could legally only go back 7 years. But in the 7 years that he had researched, there was not a single day that the sewage treatment plant had been in compliance with standards.
Yes, perfect.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
and they asked WEAN to be plaintiffs, because you already had a reputation at that point.
Yep. So this was his case. It was his trip under the
First one.
Yeah, it was his first case. Under the Clean Water Act, you get attorney's fees, which is why, in all these years, he has specialized in Clean Water Act cases, and ours was the first one. And we ended up with a cash settlement, which to us at the time seemed enormous, $35,000. And he got his attorney fees. And what we demanded of the city was that they hire a consultant to look at their system and find out what was wrong with it and fix it.
Over capacity.
Yeah, we thought it was overloaded. It was not overloaded. They just weren't doing their housekeeping.
We were doing basic maintenance.
Basic maintenance never happened.
They started doing basic maintenance, and within a couple of years, they weren't.
Yeah, she can't hear you, Steve.
Yeah. But it's so this is one of those, in 1993, you already have this reputation of holding people accountable. Do you think?
I guess, yeah.
This kind of ripple effect of accountability seems to be kind of the presence of WEAN that continues now and has been, kind of a through line for the last 40 years, it seems like. Yeah.
In fact, back here on the wall, one of them is a certificate award from what is now FutureWise and was then 1,000 Friends of Washington, saying how great and wonderful we are. And the other one is from the Seattle radio station or TV station. Yeah, it was the Making a Difference Award. So
a question I have for you both about this, because you're talking about these cases and some of them were resolved pretty quickly. Some of them lasted years and years and years. How do you keep your stamina and your momentum, and what keeps you going when things get really hard, or when you hit a roadblock and, or just levels of exhaustion?
2 words: obdurate fanaticism.
Wait, what's the first word?
Obdurate.
Obdurate. What does obdurate mean?
I have to look it up.
Oh my God. Okay. Obdurate. Obdurate.
OBDURANT.
yeah.
Unyieldingly stubborn fanaticism.
Yes.
So unyieldingly stubborn fanaticism is what keeps you going. That makes sense to me. That's Marianne, is that true for you too? Or do you have a different kind of core thing that keeps you going?
People keep asking us, how do you keep going? One of the things that is not obvious is that I call us circuit riders, that there are individuals and organizations all over the state who come to us for advice, and we kind of walk them through some of these processes. And they, one of them is down in Lakewood in Pierce County, and she's always saying, how do you keep it up? And the thing is, what are your options? I keep saying, well, yeah, I could go to work in a bubblegum factory. If it's what you do every day and all the time, and there's that constant sense of outrage. They're going to what? And I mean, there have been several times that one or the other or both of us have said, okay, this is it. I'm out of here. No more. And then somebody comes to us and says, did you know that they're going to? And it's like, if we don't, who will? And in part, that backfires on you, because if we don't, who will means that we're not training other people to do it. And I mean, I want everybody to know this stuff. This should be taught in elementary school, damn it. This is how your government works. This is how people live in a society.
Yes. Yes. If you don't, who will? Hopefully the answer is going to be all of us, right? That's the hope and the goal and the dream, and also the plan for the next phase of WEAN, right? In that way. And I think I'm going to dovetail on that and say, what's your hope for the next generation of environmentalists? Your hope for all of us. What do you want? What's your dream?
I have to say the worst words in the world that I know of, but you're so good at it. Damn it. Yeah, we're so good at it. We've been doing it for 40 years, but everybody has to be good at it, because to live in a society and to live in a functional ecosystem, everybody has to understand those basic principles. And there's two sides of those basic principles. One is the ecological principles, that you can push this far and no further because things start to break and fall apart. And the other one is the societal, social, how we interact and how we make decisions, part of it. And what I want is for everybody to get that basic education, just like we think everybody ought to be able to read and write and nowadays use a computer. Everybody ought to understand those ecological principles and those social principles.
For the current upcoming generations, they are okay. So the crisis of dealing with biodiversity loss has been ongoing for a long time, and it's now finally reached the mainstream that it's an extinction crisis of a magnitude not seen since the end of the Jurassic. And most scientists have recognized this for a long time, actually. And the current generation now is being confronted with some major contradictions. Amongst them are the reality that the planet is overpopulated with humans, that you've got politically powerful movements that want to continue that. You have very economically powerful movements that are based on that continual population growth. And you have a political economic system and a social system that is predicated on endless growth, increasing consumption of resources, increasing creation of waste, et cetera, et cetera. And so you guys have a task way more challenging than what we have ever faced. You have to reinvent society and civilization and economics at their base. And I don't have a lot of words of wisdom there. If I did, I would be a guru and putting out my YouTube videos and would be fooling around with WEAN. Okay. So what's hard is to look at this as kind of a unified thing, but it really is. If you want to go back to the basal causes, one is our evolutionary history. We like to reproduce. Sex is fun. Sex is for reproduction. Doesn't mean that's why you have to have sex or should only have sex for that, but basically that's reality. That's evolutionary reality. We also know that if you empower women and give them a relatively safe place to live and exist, and the means to control their fertility, the fertility rate drops to replacement or a little bit below, really fast, Okay. So that should be a fairly simple thing for humanity to do. Make sure every woman has, is safe and empowered and can control her fertility. And instead, it's this hugely controversial thing in virtually every society, not just Western societies, but virtually every society. So that's one kind of leg of the existential crisis here. Another leg is that humans are basically devouring the planet. I mean, if you look at it in terms of mammalian biomass, the biomass of mammals, humans currently have about 16 times. Humans, their livestock, pets, and domestic animals total about 16 times the biomass of all wild mammals at this point. Okay, there are
unbalanced.
There are way more cats in terms of biomass in the world than there are African savanna elephants. And that whole trend is accelerating. Humans are stripping to themselves almost all these resources. And you can say that's not a good idea for all kinds of reasons. I mean, there's the spiritual, there's all the functions those lands and those critters are providing keep us alive, even if we don't recognize it. Anytime, any plant in the world is helping keep me alive, no matter how insignificant or common or rare it is. Okay. So, and then we have, an economic and political systems predicated on endless growth. And against that is our evolutionary heritage that gives us perspective of having a very, very hard time of looking at long-term consequences of what we do.
Cause and effect. There's this kind of disconnect between cause and effect and the limitless growth.
We're attuned to jumping out of the way of a car. We aren't attuned to what is the effect of having cars.
Yeah.
So
that is the challenge. You're right. It totally is. And I think it's something that I've personally thought about
much longer.
Oh, what'd you say?
Not really my challenge anymore, or not for very much longer.
Right. I think often about subtraction as a design element and how, how we don't utilize it when we are thinking about how to fix things or how to problem solve. We are much more likely to add than to consider subtraction, I think, as a species. And so instead of saying, how can I maybe take something away to fix this issue, we're like, well, no, we're just going to build, or we're going to, create more instead of
technology that'll let us keep doing whatever we're doing. I have no grand solutions here, but that's kind of my words of fright to the coming generations, the existing generations now. Words of fright.
Okay. I like
that's probably pretty accurate.
I like that concept. I have a question for you both. I have this deck of cards of nature meditations that I got from Bayview, actually. And it's by this woman, Kenya Jackson Salters. And I pulled a card today, and it's about difference. And it says, difference is distinctive. When anomalies arise in nature, they are labeled as rare, not weird. We celebrate the animals and organisms that have unusual qualities, birds with unique plumage, fish that grow in the ocean's depths, trees that appear to grow upside down. They show us that different is beautiful and that there is significance in standing out. How do each of you stand out? What are your differences that you celebrate about you as an individual?
Me as an individual. Fine line there between celebrating and bragging.
What do you brag about? I know you play the guitar.
I realized a long time ago that for whatever weird reason, the way my brain is wired, I tend to see patterns and kind of be able to juggle things in my head in those terms, which I don't understand why everybody else can't do that, but apparently that is unusual. I almost always have music going in my head, and I'm usually adding lines and changing them. And I've been told that's unusual too. So
That's pretty cool. What about you, Marianne?
I guess I like it because, here I am and that's the way I am. So. Well, you're very self-effacing about your fiber skills here.
Oh, I mean, that's no big deal.
Well, what's something that you don't think is a big deal that you enjoy about yourself? Or your skills or I think it's fascinating to me that you've lived in all different structures. Apparently you built your first home, right, out of recycled materials. That's pretty unique in terms of having done things in the world. I don't think most people have built their own homes out of recycled materials.
Probably not. No, it's, I don't know, an awareness that whatever happens, it's okay. I'll be able to deal with it. And bringing order out of chaos is something that I have been doing my entire life. Mm-hmm. And Steve, unfortunately, is a great slob. So he does what he does, and I pick up pieces and straighten it all out. And yeah, sometimes there's patterns in the straightening out of the pieces. But Steve thinks that my playing with fibers is a big and wonderful thing. I think I'm just, your low end fiber. I don't even consider myself a fiber artist. Just I play with fibers. Mm-hmm. The two things I used to be vain about were my hair and my voice. Mm. And my hair has gotten really thin and gray. Mm-hmm. And my voice isn't always there when I want it. Mm. It's weird. Mm. But now that's part of getting old. Nevertheless, I can still belt it out.
I would love to hear that sometime. Voice as in your singing voice? I mean, your voice also as in your activist voice. That too.
Well, there's that voice. Steve is showing off.
Well, that's really beautiful. You made that?
So that it was I really love a challenge. And this woman gave me hair from her wire-haired terrier. And yeah, the white is Samoyed. The brown is the wire-haired terrier. And I mean, it really was like spinning barbed wire.
Oh my gosh. And just for people who maybe are listening, Steve is holding up a bag that Marianne made out of a wired hair terrier's fibers, which is incredible, actually.
Yeah,
very cool. I've been telling you for years that, this could be in a New York gallery for $500.
I agree. Someone would pay good money for that.
New York, probably not on Whidbey
Island. Okay, one last question before I let you both go. We definitely went over an hour, but that's what editing is for. But if there's anything in this moment that you would want the public to be thinking about right now, what would it be? Whether that's the public at large or just the communities on Whidbey Island?
Mainly, think about what you're doing. Think about how your individual actions interact with everybody else's individual actions and what impact that has on the world around you and the globe as a whole. Mm-hmm. I've got a number of people who are emailing me about those fools. They get on an airplane and they just go have a vacation and look at the damage they're doing. And, yes, all of us in the world are having an impact. Mm-hmm. We can be judicious about that impact. I don't believe in guilt. I mean, just think about what you're doing and think about how you are participating in the process, because I don't want to hear I'm too busy and you're so good at it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about you, Steve? Any last words for the public?
Yeah. If you wait until tomorrow, it's too late because by then it's already yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. Yep. All right. With that, I appreciate both of you speaking with me and kind of answering these questions. And we're going to be on this podcast together going forward, talking about a variety of different topics. I think the next one I kind of want to go through is the GMA and introduce people to that document, which has been crucial to, I think, a lot of the activism that WEAN has done based on, just kind of the way that I'm starting to learn and understand, kind of the different suits that have been brought against the county and the ways in which WEAN interacts with the county in the comprehensive planning process. So that's kind of where I think we'll go next. Thank you both. And until next time.
Another man up in the pulpit in the state house, head of the table with a black pen, scratching egos, talking too loud, externalize every outcome, every warm gun, every profit, and kneeling down to the flashing numbers, the NASDAQ, the cold constructs, running backwards to just keep moving, just keep moving, just keep moving. I'm learning every lesson that our mothers tried to teach us.
This podcast is a production of the Whidbey Environmental Action Network and is made possible by our generous donors. Produced, edited, and mixed by me, Amanda Bullis. Special thanks to Marianne and Steve for their years of service through action and for lending their voices to this podcast. To WEAN's Executive Director, Marnie Jackson, and our board for their leadership. Special thanks to Whidbey musician and WEAN board member Nathaniel Talbot for letting us use his track, Intuition, from the album Animal, available on Bandcamp. Remember, WEAN is always watching.
Every day on your paycheck, a volume of confidence against the idea of your body being put into your own hands. So please don't hold it, please don't hold it, please don't hold it back. Unleash the power, the straight logic of compassion. What I need now ain't that old religion or the cold hard facts. Just need a woman in which get us on track. I just need a woman in which get us on track. Stepping out of the shadow of a false man's allegory, slowly erasing that old violence from the story, recoupling emotion, slow emotion to intelligence, granting the planters, healers, teachers, feelers a new relevance. What I need now ain't that old religion or the cold